What is going on, YouTube? Welcome to another Bible study. It's your boy Andrew Michael, and welcome back to another episode of Friday Bible Study. This is episode 126, and this week we are going to do a simple Bible study, but it is an important one because it is something that I would hope that more people would do this, but there are times where it does seem like, and this is the main topic of what I wanted to talk about, is social media can be a wonderful tool to reach a lot of people. And for me, it's been easy to share the Word of God with people I've never met before, or to share the Word of God with people I don't see in person on a regular basis. But, social media can be a big nuisance if handled poorly. One of the big things that I thought about while making this Bible study yesterday is there are videos that I see on social media where literally a lot of people will just be doing this. Like, imagine this was a smartphone. This is a little fan thingy. But imagine this was a smartphone, okay? This is what I see in videos on social media, is a bunch of this. Of people filming things on their phone. Now, granted, sometimes people need to film things and record it and to share it with whoever. That's fine. But because of the rise of TikTok, because of the rise of YouTube Shorts, because of the rise of Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, what has happened is people believe that doing things like recording the video, it thinks that they're going to be popular really quickly. And the thing with short form content is, if it's content that keeps people watching the whole entire way, yeah, that video is going to get a lot of views, but the question is it worth putting you and your fame over someone else? And obviously the answer is no, but people don't think about that. They think about getting famous so they can get rich. And as I've talked about before, the love for money is the root of all evil. It is said in the Bible that the love of money is the root of all evil, because people want to be famous so they can get more money. And that is why people need to be careful with what they see on social media, because not all of it's the truth, but people believe it. People believe it. And getting into Matthew 7, which is what we're going to read today, we're going to see where in these two verses, it's simple. It's what Jesus is talking about, but the road of destruction is wide, because it's a popular thing, because people don't realize that following this wide road of destruction will actually lead to destruction. People believe that getting on this wide road, they believe that whatever everyone else is doing is what you should be doing, right? For example, there are these stupid trends I see on TikTok where I'm sure some of you have heard about the Tide Pod Challenge, where there are these teenage kids who would literally eat Tide Pods because they thought it was the popular thing to do. Obviously, anyone with a brain can put together that if you eat a Tide Pod, things are not going to go well. But obviously, the teenage kids didn't want to hear that, because they thought, well, if this is a trend I'm seeing on social media, surely this has to be a good thing, right? No, and no. But getting into the road that is narrow, the reason it's narrow is because it's not a popular thing. The road that is narrow is not a road that's popular. It's a road that takes dedication. It takes discipline. It takes patience. But following God is the road that is narrow. Because so many people don't want to follow God. They want to do their own thing. And guess what? Doing your own thing is what? Prideful. And what is the one main sin? Well, not the one, but what is one of the many sins that God does not like? Pride. And so to get into this, let us read verses 13 and 17 of Matthew 7. It reads, "Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." And that's all we're going to read today, because that's basically it. That is the context here. It's so easy to get on the wide road that a lot of people are on. It is so easy to blindly do what everyone else is doing. And I'm trying to avoid getting political here, but I do believe that's one of the main things we see with TikTok is the problem with TikTok now is people see things on TikTok and blindly believe it, which is not a good thing. And two is that the age ranges of people on TikTok is like something from like the ages of 7 or 8 up to the age of maybe like 23, 24. I don't know if that's entirely true, but I know that with TikTok, there are a lot of kids on that platform. And here the thing about kids, they don't have the ability to make decisions for themselves. They just see what they believe on TikTok and they believe it as truth. And one of the things that I've seen, and I'm trying my best not to get political, but one of the things I've seen that's interesting is how there are teachers that try to push the LGBT stuff on kids. And that's why you've got to leave kids alone. I'm sorry, but kids do not have the ability to make decisions on their own, especially a decision that can alter how they will act for the rest of their life. And it's just, people don't want to hear this. But this whole idea that someone at the age of 1 or 2 can decide that they want to change their gender is so blatantly evil. Because they can't make a decision on their own. Their parents are forcing them to change. And that's why every kid deserves a parent. Every kid deserves a mom and a dad. But not every parent deserves to be parents. Not every parent deserves a kid. And gosh, it is just so apparent about that. It is so blatantly apparent that people say they want to be kids, or they say they want to be parents, and then they become parents, and they don't want to be parents. And then, with culture today, especially now with what we're seeing with the violence we're seeing against white people, or the violence we're seeing with the border crossings, or the amount of violence we're seeing in Europe, people are just blindly seeing what they're doing and they're taking the opportunity to go for it, right? And the thing with content creation is there are so many scams out there too, where if you're not careful, you can fall for a scam like that. Like, it is so easy to blindly trust in these social media things that seem too good to be true. And the thing is, people fall for them all the time. Like with phishing schemes. Phishing schemes, if you don't know, are where you get an email and it looks legit, but it's not. And then when you click on a link on that email, boom, you've lost all your money. You've lost your identity. You've lost everything. And people say, oh, Beekeeper isn't legit. Beekeeper isn't the truth. It's close. It's not quite the truth, but it's a depiction of why you cannot blindly trust everything. But that's why you've got to put your hope and trust in the Lord, because He's not going to trick you. The Lord is not going to trick you into believing blind things. He's just not, because God is good. Whether you want to believe it or not, God is holy. He is divine. He is righteous. But guess what? We aren't, because we have free will. And because we have free will, we have to decide if we want to follow God or not. And going with social media, not everything you see on social media is from God. A lot of it is from humans, and that's why you've got to decide if you're going to trust social media or if you're going to let it tell you what to do. And with that being said, I've got some notes, and I want to go through these. Point number 1. Social media is great, but it shouldn't replace testing things according to your faith. I forget where this is, but there's a passage that Paul talks about where when it comes to things in our lives, we have to test it to see if it aligns with our faith. And if it doesn't align with our faith, do not follow it. It is so easy to just read something on social media and just believe it. It is so easy to just see something on Twitter or see something on YouTube or see something on Instagram or see something on Facebook and blindly believe it. And the thing is, people don't do the critical thinking like they used to. People don't use the reasoning they used to. They just blindly believe it. And that's why I think society is the way it is, because of the fact that people don't want to test it. People don't want to put in the time to believe it. They just want to believe whatever they want to. And a lot of times, it isn't according to your faith. And it's going to lead to destruction because you blindly believe someone on TikTok. You blindly believed someone on YouTube who was basically scamming you. And that's what a lot of these things are scams. One of the things I saw, and someone pointed this out, is there are these scams with Fortnite. And if you don't know, Fortnite is also one of those video games that's targeted towards kids. And again, kids don't have the ability to think for themselves. And so what winds up happening is there are these scams where people will be streaming doing some random thing, and they'll do it to boost their subscriber numbers. They'll do it to boost the views they get, so that the more views they get, the more people will watch what they're doing. And the more views someone will get. And the more views something get, the more people believe, okay, does this have the pull to be a good review or not? One of the things that I do when I go to restaurants is I do food reviews. And I do them on Google. I don't make video reviews about them, but I go on Google and I leave Google reviews about a restaurant. And one of the things you have to do as a reviewer is you need to be honest. Now, sometimes it's hard to be honest if you really like a restaurant, but you've got to understand this review is not just about you liking something. You have to think about if someone is looking to go to a restaurant, what are they looking for in a review? And is my review helpful or not? That's what you got to think about here. And going again to this, social media can be a wonderful tool if used right, but a lot of times people don't do it. People nowadays see it as, how can I get famous? How can I make a lot of money? How can a lot of people know about me? That's just where social media is, and I don't think it's going to get any better. It just isn't. Point number 2. Be careful where you get your information from, because you might find out the people you trust for news is blatantly lying for you. There are these online journalists that I swear, I don't know where they get their journalism degrees from, but wherever they get them from, they need to be revoked, because some of it's just awful. Trying not to get political here, but there is this, well, sorry, back up. There was this sports article website called Deadspin. And the problem with Deadspin is they made this article about this kid who they believed was doing blackface. And if you don't know blackface, blackface is where you paint your face black and you act like a black person. Here's the thing about Deadspin that they got vehemently wrong. The kid who was supposedly wearing blackface, he was a Kansas City Chiefs fan. If you don't know, their whole thing is that their mascot's Indian and their whole thing is about being Indians or whatever. And Deadspin had a picture of this side of their face being black, but the actual photo is, sorry, let me adjust this. The other side of their face was red. So this kid, one, had black and red on, but two, the kid was half Indian. So he had the ability to be like an Indian because that's what he was. But the person that made this article was race baiting. And people caught on to that. And this Deadspin writer caught so much heat, and rightfully so. Because this person, this journalist, I'm just going to say it, they did everything they could to use race as a reason for this to be a problem. And a couple months later, not only did they get sued for what they did, but the person that took over Deadspin fired every single employee that worked there because of that incident. And the thing is, people blindly believed it. People blindly believed in this. Another example of this, if you have not seen, there's this one girl in St. Louis who she was beaten up barbarically by this black girl. And the victim, and she's still hospitalized, her head was literally slammed against the concrete multiple times. And people know that the black girl is guilty. But now there are people, and I cannot believe this is actually a thing, but there are people who now think the suspect, who we all clearly saw, did this out of malicious intent. They're trying to spin it like the black girl is innocent, that she's the victim in all of this. And I'm like, how can you watch that video and tell me that she is the victim? Like, clearly that's not the case. Clearly, anyone with eyes know that that is not true. And yet people will believe that now the black girl's a victim, which we all know is not the case. And again, not making this about race, but the point is, you have got to be careful what you trust in. You have got to be careful not to just blindly believe everything you see on social media. Because there are people who will just blindly believe whatever, and you cannot do that. But the sad reality is now people will just believe anything they see, and the road to destruction is wide. And that is one of the reasons why it's wide, is because people will just follow whatever nonsense they see and go for it. But following God is narrow. It's not the popular thing to do. And apparently now having common sense is not the popular thing to do. But having common sense is going to save you so much heartache in the end. It will. Point number 3. There will be a time where you have to choose between following God versus following social media. And you have to be ready to not only choose God, but the consequences of following God. There are people online where if someone is guilty of doing something, they get death threats. You will have a trove of death threats sent to you if you do something that is unpopular, right? For example, there are all these people online who, if there's any kind of drama, whoever's guilty will be sent a bunch of death threats. Because these keyboard warriors are too afraid to actually do anything. So all they do is they mock someone and they ridicule people, but they themselves will not take the time to actually do something. They won't do it because they know if they do it, they're going to go to jail. Can't do that, folks. You can't. But that's why when you follow God, there are going to be consequences, which aren't actual consequences. It's just society being evil. But the main consequence is obviously you might be attacked for your faith. And I think now we are at a point in time where with America, if we're not careful, free speech is going to be gone. And if the First Amendment is gone, freedom of religion is going to go out the window. And if we don't have freedom of religion, we are going to actually be attacked for our faith. And ladies and gentlemen, I see this now more than ever, but the government wants to control you. The government is trying everything they can to control you. And now it has come out where one of the Supreme Court justices believes that the First Amendment is too controlling. Because that is the whole point of the First Amendment, is we do not need government interfering with our freedom of speech. And if they control our freedom of speech, we're going to have a whole bunch of trouble on our hands. And so with that being said, thank you all for watching this Bible study. I hope you all have enjoyed it. And until next time, I'm Andrew Michael. I will see